his daughter whispered. "Daddy cries at night." And in that moment, a waitress who'd never known his pain saw straight through his broken heart. But when she tried to help, he pushed her away until she uncovered the shocking truth behind his silence. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of Luke Harris's bedroom, casting long shadows across the worn hardwood floor. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, his body heavy with exhaustion. Another night had passed without real rest, filled instead with memories he couldn't shake and thoughts that wouldn't quiet down. The digital clock on his nightstand showed 6:45 a.m. Luke rubbed his tired eyes, feeling the familiar ache in his temples. His military training still wouldn't let him sleep past dawn, even though he'd been out of service for years now. "Daddy?" Emma's small voice called from down the hall. "Are you awake?" Luke sat up, pushing aside the tangled sheets. "I'm up, sweetie," he called back, his voice rough from lack of sleep. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, taking a moment to steady himself. The house was quiet except for the soft padding of Emma's feet as she made her way to his room. She appeared in the doorway, her brown hair tousled from sleep, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. Her pink pajamas had little stars all over them, the ones Sarah had picked out before. Luke pushed the thought away. "Good morning, Princess," he said, managing a small smile. Emma climbed onto the bed beside him, wrapping her small arms around his waist. "Did you have bad dreams again?" she asked, looking up at him with concerned eyes that seemed too knowing for someone so young. Luke's heart clenched. He should be better at hiding it from her, but children had a way of seeing through the masks adults wore. "Just tired," he said, running his hand over her messy hair. "How about some breakfast?" Emma nodded eagerly, already forgetting her worry as only children could. "Can we have pancakes? How about scrambled eggs today?" Luke suggested, standing up and lifting Emma into his arms. She was getting heavier, growing so fast. Sometimes it scared him how quickly time was passing. In the kitchen, Luke set Emma down at the small round table by the window. Morning light streamed in, warming the worn linoleum floor. The kitchen was modest but clean, with old but well-maintained appliances. A few of Emma's drawings were stuck to the refrigerator with alphabet magnets, adding spots of color to the otherwise plain space. Luke moved through the familiar motions of breakfast preparation. Eggs from the fridge, the old blue bowl from the cabinet, the whisk that needed replacing but still did its job. Each movement was mechanical, practiced, a routine he could do without thinking. Sometimes that was easier, not thinking. "Can I help crack the eggs?" Emma asked, bouncing slightly in her chair. "Not today, sweetie," Luke replied, already breaking them into the bowl. He didn't have the energy to clean up any accidents this morning. The guilt crept in immediately. He should be more patient, more engaging. Emma deserved better than his hollow presence. The eggs sizzled as they hit the pan, filling the kitchen with their warm smell. Emma hummed a tune from one of her cartoons, swinging her legs under the table. Luke watched her from the corner of his eye as he stirred the eggs, noting how the morning light caught her hair just like it used to catch Sarah's. His hands trembled slightly as he divided the eggs onto 2 plates, adding toast he'd made while the eggs cooked. The toast was slightly darker than Emma usually liked it, but she didn't complain when he set the plate in front of her. "Thank you, Daddy," she said, picking up her fork with careful determination. She'd been working on her table manners, trying so hard to be grown up. Luke sat across from her, with his own plate, though he had little appetite. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the soft scrape of forks against plates and the distant sound of morning traffic outside. Emma ate with the focused concentration of a child, while Luke pushed his eggs around his plate, taking occasional bites more out of necessity than desire. The morning sun grew stronger, streaming through the window and highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. He tried to smile when Emma looked up at him, but it felt weak, forced. The weight in his chest seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. Here he was, sharing breakfast with his beautiful daughter, and all he could feel was the crushing loneliness that had become his constant companion. Emma finished her eggs and looked expectantly at him. "Can I watch cartoons now?" "After you take your plate to the sink," Luke reminded her. watching as she carefully carried her plate across the kitchen. She was so responsible for her age, another thing that sometimes broke his heart. She'd had to grow up too fast after Sarah died, after he came back changed from his last tour. As Emma settled in front of the TV in the living room, Luke remained at the kitchen table, his own breakfast half-eaten and growing cold. He could hear the cheerful sounds of cartoon characters floating in from the other room, such a stark contrast to the heaviness in his chest. He wished he knew how to make things better, how to be the father Emma deserved. But the memories of his time in service, the things he'd seen and done, they clung to him like shadows. They colored everything, even these quiet morning moments with his daughter. Luke looked down at his plate, the scrambled eggs now congealed and unappetizing. Through the kitchen doorway, he could see Emma sitting cross-legged on the carpet, completely absorbed in her show. She looked so small, so innocent. The sight of her there, alone with her cartoons, while he sat here drowning in his own darkness, made his heart ache even more. He wanted to go to her, to sit beside her and share in her simple joy, but his body felt heavy, anchored to the chair by the weight of his thoughts. So he stayed where he was, watching his daughter from a distance, feeling the familiar tide of loneliness rise in his chest. The morning sun continued to shine through the window, but its warmth couldn't reach the cold places inside him. The morning sun had climbed higher in the sky as Luke's old pickup truck rumbled down Main Street. Emma sat in her car seat, humming softly to herself while clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. Luke glanced at her through the rearview mirror, managing a small smile at her contentment. The local diner, Joe's Place, stood like a beacon of normalcy in their daily routine. Its red brick exterior and weathered sign had become a familiar comfort over the past few months. Luke pulled into the parking lot, the gravel crunching under the truck's tires. "Ready for pancakes, sweetie?" Luke asked, his voice gentle as he helped Emma out of her car seat. Emma nodded eagerly, her blonde pigtails bouncing. "With extra syrup?" "Maybe just a little extra," Luke said, taking her small hand in his. The warmth of her tiny fingers against his palm always helped ground him, keeping the darker thoughts at bay. The bell above the door chimed as they entered. The aroma of coffee and freshly baked bread wrapped around them like a warm blanket. The diner wasn't crowded, just a few regulars scattered among the red vinyl booths and chrome-edged tables. "Well, if it isn't my favorite customers." Lily's voice carried across the diner, bright and welcoming. She emerged from behind the counter, coffee pot in hand, her auburn hair tied back in a neat ponytail. Her green apron had a small coffee stain near the pocket, but her smile was spotless and genuine. "Lily!" Emma called out, waving enthusiastically. Luke nodded in greeting, managing a polite smile. Lily had been serving them breakfast for months now, and her consistent kindness was something he'd come to appreciate, even if he rarely showed it. "Your usual booth is waiting for you," Lily said, gesturing to their preferred spot by the window. The morning light streamed through the glass, creating patterns on the worn tabletop. Luke helped Emma slide into the booth before taking his seat across from her. The vinyl cushions squeaked beneath him, a familiar sound that had become part of their morning ritual. Lily approached their table, setting down two menus they rarely needed to look at anymore. "Coffee for Dad?" she said, filling Luke's cup with practiced precision. "And how about some orange juice for the princess?" Emma beamed at being called princess. "Yes, please." Luke watched as Lily poured Emma's juice, noting how she always made sure to fill it just right, not too full for small hands to handle. These little considerations didn't go unnoticed, even if he never mentioned them. "The usual for both of you?" Lily asked, pulling out her notepad despite already knowing the answer. "Yes, please," Luke replied, his voice slightly hoarse from lack of sleep. "Chocolate chip pancakes for Emma, with extra whipped cream," Emma chimed in. "And the breakfast special for you," Lily finished, jotting it down anyway. "Over medium eggs, crispy bacon, and wheat toast." The familiar exchange was comforting, part of the routine that helped Luke maintain some semblance of normalcy. He watched as Emma arranged her silverware with careful concentration, making sure each piece was perfectly straight. "Daddy," Emma said suddenly, looking up at Lily, who was still standing by their table. Her innocent eyes were wide and concerned. Daddy cries at night. The words hit Luke like a physical blow. His hand froze mid-reach for his coffee cup, and he felt the color drain from his face. The ambient sounds of the diner, the clinking of dishes, the murmur of conversation, the sizzle from the kitchen, seemed to fade away, leaving only a hollow ringing in his ears. Lily stood perfectly still, her notepad suspended in midair. Her eyes met Luke's for just a moment, and in that brief connection, he saw something that made his chest tighten, not pity, but a deep, knowing understanding. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Luke's throat felt tight, and his hands trembled slightly as he finally grasped his coffee cup, more for something to hold on to than any desire to drink. Emma, unaware of the weight of her words, continued arranging her silverware, humming softly to herself. The morning sunlight caught in her hair, creating a golden halo that reminded Luke painfully of her mother. Lily's expression softened, but she didn't rush to fill the silence with empty words or unwanted comfort. Instead, she simply nodded, took a small step back, and said quietly, "I'll get those orders in for you." Her movement was deliberate, giving Luke the space to collect himself, to rebuild the walls that his daughter's innocent observation had suddenly torn down. Luke sat there, his coffee untouched, feeling exposed in a way he hadn't in years. His daughter's words echoed in his mind. A truth he'd tried so hard to keep hidden now laid bare in the morning light of a small-town diner. He looked out the window, trying to steady his breathing, while Emma continued her careful arrangement of the silverware, oblivious to the impact of her revelation. The moment hung there, suspended in time, as Luke struggled to find his footing in this new, more vulnerable reality. His daughter's words had cracked open something he'd worked so hard to keep sealed away, and now it sat between them all, him, Emma, and Lily, like an uninvited guest at their breakfast table. Luke's cheeks burned as he fumbled with Emma's coat, his fingers trembling slightly. The diner's warm atmosphere now felt suffocating, and he could feel Lily's concerned gaze on his back. "Come on, sweetheart," he muttered, helping Emma slide her arms into the sleeves. "We need to get going." "But Daddy, I didn't finish my pancakes," Emma protested, her lower lip quivering as she looked at her half-eaten breakfast. "We'll get some another time," Luke said, his voice strained. He pulled out his wallet and quickly placed some bills on the table, deliberately avoiding eye contact with anyone in the diner. Emma dragged her feet as Luke guided her toward the door, her small hand wrapped in his larger one. "Can we say bye to Miss Lily?" Luke's jaw tightened. "Not today, Emma. We're in a hurry." The bell above the door chimed as they stepped out into the cool morning air. Luke's truck sat in the parking lot, a familiar refuge. He helped Emma into her car seat, his movements mechanical as he buckled her in. "Did I say something wrong, Daddy?" Emma's voice was small and uncertain. Luke's hands stilled on the buckle. His daughter's innocent question pierced through his defensive walls, making his chest ache. "No, sweetie," he managed to say. "You didn't do anything wrong." The drive home was quiet, save for the soft country music playing on the radio. Luke gripped the steering wheel too tightly, his knuckles white. Every few minutes, he'd glance in the rearview mirror at Emma, who sat quietly looking out the window, her usual cheerful chatter absent. At home, Luke went through the motions of their daily routine. He helped Emma with her coloring books, made her lunch, and watched her favorite cartoon with her. But his mind kept drifting back to the diner, to the moment when his private struggles had been exposed by the pure honesty of a child. As afternoon faded into evening, Luke prepared a simple dinner of mac and cheese, Emma's favorite. He watched her eat, trying to force down his own food despite the knot in his stomach. "Daddy?" Emma asked, pushing her empty bowl away. "Yes, sweetheart? Are you mad at me?" Luke set his fork down and reached across the table to take her small hand. "No, Emma, I could never be mad at you. Sometimes grown-ups just have tough days." After dinner, he gave Emma her bath, helped her into her princess pajamas, and read her favorite bedtime story. As he tucked her in, she wrapped her arms around his neck in a tight hug. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I love you too, Princess." His voice cracked slightly as he kissed her forehead. Once Emma was asleep, Luke made his way to the living room. He sank into his old armchair, the one that still held the indent of countless sleepless nights. The house creaked around him, the silence broken only by the soft ticking of the wall clock. In the darkness, his thoughts wandered to Lily's face at the diner, the gentle concern in her eyes, the way she'd seemed ready to listen without judgment. For a brief moment, he considered going back tomorrow, maybe trying to explain. The thought of opening up, of sharing the weight he carried, tempted him like a mirage in the desert. But years of military training and ingrained stoicism pushed back against the impulse. Warriors didn't cry. They didn't burden others with their problems. They certainly didn't break down in diners over breakfast. Luke rubbed his face with his hands, feeling the rough stubble under his palms. The shadows in the room seemed to deepen, matching the darkness of his thoughts. His service medals hung on the wall, catching what little moonlight filtered through the windows. They reminded him of everything he'd been. Strong, capable, in control. Now he couldn't even handle a simple breakfast with his daughter without falling apart. The clock struck 10, then 11. Luke remained in his chair, wrestling with his thoughts. The idea of sleep seemed distant, unreachable. He knew what waited for him in his dreams, the memories, the faces, the sounds that never quite faded. Finally, exhaustion began to weigh on him like a heavy blanket. He pushed himself up from the chair, his joints, protesting the movement after sitting still for so long. The walk to his bedroom felt longer than usual, each step an effort against the crushing weight of his pride and pain. As he passed Emma's room, he paused at her door, listening to her soft, steady breathing. His little girl, so innocent and pure, seeing right through his carefully constructed walls with just a few simple words. He wanted to be better for her, wanted to be the father she deserved. But the thought of facing his demons, of admitting he needed help, felt like an insurmountable mountain. In his bedroom, Luke sat on the edge of his bed, not bothering to turn on the lights. The darkness felt fitting, matching his mood. He knew sleep would be elusive tonight, just as it had been so many nights before. But he lay down anyway, staring at the ceiling, surrounded by the quiet of the house and the loud thoughts in his head. The morning sun cast long shadows through the diner's windows as Luke pulled into the parking lot. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, and he took a deep breath before turning to look at Emma in the back seat. She was already bouncing with excitement, her small face lit up at the prospect of pancakes. "Can we get the ones with chocolate chips today, Daddy?" Emma asked, unbuckling her seatbelt with practiced determination. Luke managed a small smile. "We'll see, sweetheart." His stomach churned as he thought about going inside, remembering Emma's innocent words from their last visit. But he couldn't let his daughter down, not when this was one of her favorite places. As they walked through the door, the familiar bell chimed above them. The diner was busy with the morning rush. The clinking of coffee cups and the low hum of conversation filled the air. Luke's eyes automatically scanned the room, an old habit from his military days that he couldn't shake. He spotted Lily right away. She moved efficiently between tables, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, offering warm smiles to customers as she refilled coffee cups. When she turned and saw them, her smile didn't falter, but Luke noticed a flash of something in her eyes. Concern, maybe? "Our usual spot is open," Emma declared, pointing to their regular booth by the window. Luke followed her, keeping his head down as they passed other diners. The vinyl seats squeaked as they settled in, and Emma immediately reached for the children's menu and crayons that were already placed there. Luke picked up his menu, though he knew it by heart. He held it up like a shield, trying to make himself invisible behind its laminated pages. But Emma's cheerful voice carried across the diner as she hummed while coloring. "Good morning." Lily's voice was warm and gentle as she approached their table. She set down 2 glasses of water, complete with a pink, bendy straw for Emma. "How's my favorite artist doing today?" Emma beamed up at her. "I'm drawing a unicorn. See?" She held up her half-finished masterpiece, and Lily leaned in with genuine interest. "That's beautiful, Emma. I love the rainbow colors you're using." Lily's praise made Emma giggle with delight. Then she turned to Luke, her expression soft but careful. "The usual for you today, Luke?" Or would you like to try our special? Luke lowered his menu slightly, meeting her eyes briefly before looking away. Just the usual, thanks. His voice came out rougher than he intended. And for the little lady? Lily asked, turning back to Emma. Chocolate chip pancakes, please, Emma exclaimed. With extra whipped cream? Extra whipped cream it is, Lily agreed with a wink. She jotted down their order and hesitated for a moment, as if wanting to say something more to Luke, but instead turned and headed toward the kitchen. As they waited for their food, Luke watched Emma color, grateful for the distraction she provided. She chatted about her upcoming day at kindergarten, her friends, and the class pet, a hamster named Mr. Whiskers. Luke nodded at appropriate intervals, but his mind kept drifting to Lily's concerned looks. When their food arrived, Lily set down the plates with care. Emma's pancakes were artfully decorated with whipped cream and a smiley face made of chocolate chips. Luke's eggs and toast were exactly as he liked them. Simple, predictable, safe. Is there anything else you need? Lily asked, lingering at their table longer than usual. Luke shook his head, focusing on cutting his eggs into neat, even pieces. Emma, however, launched into a detailed explanation of her unicorn drawing, and Lily listened patiently, offering encouraging comments. Throughout their meal, Luke noticed Lily checking on them more frequently than necessary. Each time she passed, she seemed to be watching him with quiet understanding. It made him uncomfortable, knowing that someone had noticed the cracks in his carefully constructed facade. Emma took her time eating, making shapes with her syrup, and telling stories between bites. Luke found himself relaxing slightly, lulled by the routine of their breakfast ritual and his daughter's innocent chatter. When they finished, Luke reached for his wallet, ready to make a quick exit. But as he stood up, helping Emma with her coat, Lily appeared beside their table. She set down the check and then, in a voice so soft only he could hear, said, I know it's not easy, but you don't have to go through this alone. Luke froze, his hand stilling on Emma's zipper. The kindness in Lily's voice made his throat tight. He couldn't look at her, didn't want to see the understanding in her eyes. Instead, he mumbled a quick thanks and guided Emma toward the door, leaving enough cash on the table to cover the bill and a generous tip. As they walked to the car, Luke's mind whirled with Lily's words. They echoed in his head, stirring up emotions he'd rather keep buried. He helped Emma into her car seat, going through the motions automatically, while wondering how this waitress had seen through his carefully maintained walls. More importantly, why did her offer of support make him want to run in the opposite direction? The morning sun filtered through the diner's windows as Luke sat in his usual booth, watching Emma color. 5 days since Lily's words had pierced his walls, and he couldn't forget them. Daddy, look! Emma held up her drawing. It's us at the park with the ducks. Luke forced a smile. Beautiful, sweetheart. I like the purple duck. That's not a duck, silly. That's you, Emma giggled. Lily's footsteps approached. He'd memorized their rhythm. My favorite artist, Lily said warmly, setting down milk and coffee. What masterpiece today? Emma beamed. Me and Daddy at the park. He's purple 'cause that's his favorite color. Luke shifted uncomfortably. He'd never said purple was his favorite. It wasn't. But Emma's attempt to know him better made his chest ache. Purple's special, Lily replied, smiling at Luke. Your usual or feeling adventurous? Pancakes, Emma declared. With extra strawberries. Emma, Luke warned. Come on, Dad, Lily teased. It's Saturday. Live a little. Something in her eyes made his defenses waver. All right. Pancakes. As Lily walked away, Luke's eyes followed her easy grace. Her laugh brightened the whole room. I like Miss Lily, Emma announced. She always makes the sad go away. Luke froze. What do you mean? When you look sad, she makes you smile. Like magic. Luke sat back, struck by his daughter's perception. He hadn't realized his emotions were so transparent. When Lily returned with pancakes topped with a whipped cream smiley face, Emma clapped in delight. Luke felt a crack form in his distance. Thank you, he said softly, meeting her eyes. Any time, she replied, meaning more than just pancakes. Throughout their meal, Luke noticed Lily's awareness, refilled coffee, extra napkins, kindness rather than necessity. As they finished, Luke felt unfamiliar lightness. It scared him. "Ready for the check?" Lily asked. Luke nodded, watching her write something besides their bill. She hesitated before tearing off the paper. "Here's your check," she said, placing it face down. "And this, my number. If you ever want to talk about anything, I'm usually up late." Luke stared at the paper, her neat handwriting, a heart beside her name. His throat tightened. "I don't," he started. "No pressure," she said softly. "Sometimes it helps knowing you're not alone." Everything in his training screamed to decline, but something like hope made him take the paper, folding it carefully into his pocket. "Thank you," he managed roughly. Lily smiled before turning away. Luke sat there, hand touching his pocket. For the first time in years, something shifted a crack in his fortress. "Come on, Emma," he said, helping gather crayons. "Time to go." Emma waved goodbye to Lily, who returned it brightly. Luke nodded, unable to speak, and stepped into sunshine, the note feeling like both lifeline and challenge. Luke sat at his kitchen table, the dim light of his phone screen illuminating his tired face. It was just past midnight, and Emma had been asleep for hours. The small piece of paper with Lily's number lay before him, its edges already worn from the countless times he'd pulled it out and put it away again. His fingers trembled slightly as he picked up the note. The numbers were written in neat, rounded handwriting, with a small heart dotted over the I in Lily's name. It seemed so innocent, so different from the darkness that plagued his nights. Another wave of loneliness washed over him. The house felt too quiet, too empty. The sound of the wall clock ticking seemed to mock his isolation. He glanced down the hallway toward Emma's room, thinking about her innocent comment at the diner that had started all of this. "You don't have to go through this alone." Lily's words echoed in his mind. Luke picked up his phone, then set it down again. He ran his hands through his gray-streaked hair, feeling the weight of indecision. What would he even say? How could he explain the demons that haunted him every night? The memories came unbidden, the explosive sounds of combat, the faces of fallen comrades, the crushing weight of responsibility. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to push them away. When he opened them again, his gaze fell on a family photo on the wall. 1C, him, Emma, and Sarah. His chest tightened. Before he could talk himself out of it, Luke grabbed his phone and dialed the number. His heart pounded as it rang once, twice, 3 times. He almost hung up, but then, "Hello?" Lily's voice was soft, gentle. Luke's throat felt dry. This is Luke Harris, from the diner." "Luke," she said warmly. "I'm glad you called." The simple sincerity in her voice made something break loose inside him. "I hope it's not too late," he managed. "Not at all. I'm usually up late anyway." There was a pause. Then, "How are you doing?" The question, so simple, yet so loaded, hung in the air. Luke found himself sinking into a kitchen chair. "I don't know," he admitted. I haven't been sleeping well." "The nightmares?" Lily asked quietly. Luke's breath caught. "How did you?" "I see things, Luke. I notice when people are hurting." Her voice was kind, without judgment. "And Emma, she worries about you." The mention of his daughter made his eyes burn. "She shouldn't have to," he whispered. "She's just a little girl. She shouldn't have to worry about her father." "No, she shouldn't," Lily agreed. "But she loves you. That's what family does. We worry about the people we love." The word family hit him hard. "I'm supposed to be stronger than this," he said, his voice rough. "After Sarah died, I promised myself I'd be enough for Emma. But some nights," he trailed off, struggling to find the words. "Some nights the memories won't let you rest." Lily finished softly. Luke closed his eyes. Yeah. The admission felt like letting go of a weight he'd carried for too long. "The things I saw over there, the things I had to do, they follow me home. Every night, it's like I'm back there again." "PTSD isn't weakness, Luke," Lily said firmly. "It's a wound, just like any other. And like any wound, it needs time and care to heal." The words struck something deep inside him. "How do you heal from something you can't even talk about?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "You start by doing exactly what you're doing now," she replied. "You reach out. You let someone listen." And so he talked. The words came slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. He told her about the nightmares, about waking up in cold sweats, about the guilt of surviving when others hadn't. He talked about Sarah's sudden death, about the overwhelming responsibility of raising Emma alone, about the constant fear that he wasn't enough for his daughter. Lily listened. She didn't try to fix anything or offer empty platitudes. She just listened, occasionally asking gentle questions that helped him dig deeper, understand more. Hours passed. The kitchen clock struck 2, then 3. Luke's voice grew hoarse, but still, he talked. He shared things he'd never told anyone. Not his commanding officers, not the VA counselors, not even Sarah when she was alive. "I don't want Emma to grow up with a broken father," he confessed, exhaustion making him more honest than he'd intended to be. "Luke." Lily's voice was soft but firm. "You're not broken. You're hurting. Yes. You're healing, yes. But that doesn't make you broken. And Emma? She doesn't see a broken man. She sees her father who loves her enough to keep trying, even when it's hard." Luke felt tears sliding down his cheeks, but for the first time in years, they weren't tears of pain or grief. They were tears of relief, of being truly seen and understood. "I should let you get some sleep," he said, finally noticing the time. "Thank you for trusting me with this," Lily replied. "Means a lot." Luke looked at the family photo on the wall again, but this time, the sight didn't bring the usual stab of pain. "Thank you for listening," he said quietly. I feel lighter somehow. That's what sharing our burdens does," she said. "It makes them easier to carry." As Luke ended the call, he sat in the quiet kitchen for a long moment. The weight of his memories was still there, but it felt different now, more manageable, less overwhelming. He didn't know where this connection with Lily might lead, but for the first time in years, he felt something he'd almost forgotten: hope. The morning sun streamed through the diner's windows, casting warm patches of light across the worn linoleum floor. Luke pushed open the glass door, the familiar bell chiming above as Emma skipped beside him, her small hand wrapped tightly in his. The smell of fresh coffee and maple syrup wrapped around them like a comfortable blanket. "Good morning," Lily's cheerful voice carried across the diner. She was already moving toward their usual booth, coffee pot in hand. Her smile was gentle, understanding, the kind that made Luke's defenses slip just a little. "Morning, Miss Lily." Emma bounced in her seat, her eyes bright with excitement. "Can I have waffles today?" "Of course, sweetie." Lily winked at Emma before turning to Luke. "The usual for you?" Luke nodded, managing a small smile. "Thanks, Lily." His voice was rough from another restless night, but something about being here made the exhaustion a little more bearable. As the days turned into weeks, their visits became more frequent. Luke found himself looking forward to these moments, even if he wouldn't admit it out loud. Lily had a way of making everything feel lighter, more manageable. One morning, when Emma was coloring at their table, Lily appeared with a fresh pot of coffee. "I made it extra strong today," she said quietly, filling Luke's cup. "You look like you could use it." Luke wrapped his hands around the blinds. Warm mug, grateful for her thoughtfulness. "That obvious, huh? Let's just say I recognize tired eyes when I see them." Her voice held no judgment, just gentle concern. On another visit, Lily brought Emma a plate of waffles decorated with whipped cream and extra strawberries arranged in a smiling face. "A special treat for my favorite customer," she said, ruffling Emma's hair. "Daddy, look! The strawberries are smiling." Emma's delight filled the diner, and Luke caught himself smiling too, really smiling, for the first time in what felt like forever. These small gestures continued, weaving themselves into the fabric of their routine. Sometimes it was a fresh-baked cookie slipped onto Emma's plate. Other times, a quiet word of encouragement when Luke looked particularly worn down. One rainy afternoon, Lily brought them their usual order, but this time she'd added a small cup of hot chocolate with mini marshmallows for Emma. "It's perfect hot chocolate weather," she explained, watching Emma's face light up. "You don't have to do all this," Luke said softly, when Emma was distracted by her treat. "I know I don't have to," Lily replied, her eyes kind. "I want to." The weeks passed, and Luke found himself opening up more during their brief conversations. He'd share small details about his day, or laugh at Lily's gentle jokes. Emma bloomed under the extra attention, chattering more freely and drawing pictures for Lily to hang on the diner's bulletin board. But the nights were still hard. The shadows under Luke's eyes grew darker, and his hands sometimes shook as he lifted his coffee cup. Lily noticed. She always noticed, but she kept her concern to herself, waiting for the right moment. That moment came on a quiet evening, just before closing time. Luke had brought Emma in for dinner, looking more exhausted than usual. His movements were slow, heavy with fatigue, and he barely touched his food. After Emma finished her meal and went to look at the dessert display, Lily approached their table. She hesitated for a moment, then sat down across from Luke. "Luke," she started gently, her voice barely above a whisper. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I'm worried about you." Luke stiffened slightly but didn't respond. "Have you ever considered talking to someone?" Lily continued carefully. "A professional, I mean. Someone who specializes in helping veterans?" The change in Luke's demeanor was immediate. His shoulders tensed, and the openness that had slowly been developing between them snapped shut like a steel trap. "I appreciate the concern," he said, his voice tight, "but I'm fine. Luke, I'm handling it." He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Emma, honey, time to go." Emma looked up from the dessert case, confusion crossing her small face. "But Daddy." "Now, sweetheart." His voice was gentle but firm. Luke pulled out his wallet, leaving money on the table. "Thanks for dinner," he said to Lily, not meeting her eyes. The shame of his reaction burned in his chest, mixing with embarrassment and a hint of anger, at himself or at Lily. He wasn't sure. "Luke, please." Lily tried one more time, but he was already gathering their things. "Come on, Emma," he said, taking his daughter's hand. They walked toward the door, Emma looking back at Lily with worried eyes. "Bye, Miss Lily," Emma called out softly as they left, the bell above the door chiming their departure. Lily stood in the empty diner, watching through the window as Luke and Emma disappeared into the evening darkness. She pressed her lips together, wishing she had found a better way to say what needed to be said, knowing that sometimes the hardest things to hear were the ones we needed most. Luke sat at his kitchen table, staring at the empty coffee mug in front of him. Emma's cheerful humming drifted from the living room where she was coloring, but even her innocent joy couldn't lift the heavy weight in his chest. Lily's words from yesterday echoed in his mind. "There's no shame in getting help." He rubbed his face with both hands, feeling the rough stubble against his palms. The suggestion of therapy kept circling in his thoughts, bringing with it a mix of anger and fear he couldn't quite shake. The mere idea of talking to a stranger about the things he'd seen, the memories that haunted his nights, it made his stomach turn. "Daddy?" Emma's small voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Can we go see Miss Lily today?" Luke's throat tightened. "Not today, sweetheart. How about we make pancakes here instead?" Emma's face fell slightly, but she nodded. "Okay. Can you make them with chocolate chips?" "Sure thing, princess." He forced a smile, but the guilt was already creeping in. He knew Emma loved their diner visits, loved watching Lily work her magic with other customers, loved the special little treats Lily always seemed to have ready just for her. Over the next few days, Luke found excuses to avoid the diner. They were running late. He had already made breakfast. The weather was bad. Each excuse felt hollow, but he couldn't bring himself to face Lily's kindness, couldn't bear to see the concern in her eyes. It was easier to hide, to retreat into the familiar comfort of isolation. At night, after Emma was asleep, he would sit in his darkened living room, remembering the way Lily would lean against the counter while they talked, how she seemed to understand even the things he couldn't put into words. The loneliness felt heavier now, more acute, but he told himself it was better this way. Better to keep his distance, to protect himself from the vulnerability that came with letting someone in. On the fourth morning of their self-imposed exile from the diner, Emma stood in the kitchen doorway in her favorite purple pajamas, her bottom lip trembling slightly. "Daddy, I miss Miss Lily's special pancakes." Luke's resolve crumbled at the sight of his daughter's sad face. He realized he was ready, punishing her for his own fears, his own inability to accept help. "Tell you what," he said, kneeling down to her level, "how about we go to the diner for breakfast today?" Emma's face lit up, but Luke's stomach churned with anxiety as they made their way to the familiar building. The morning was crisp, and Emma's excited chatter filled the air, but he barely heard it over the pounding of his own heart. The bell above the door chimed as they entered. Luke immediately noticed Lily behind the counter, her honey-brown hair pulled back in its usual neat ponytail. She looked up at the sound, and for a moment, their eyes met. There was no judgment in her gaze, no hint of reproach for their absence, just that same gentle understanding that made his chest ache. "Emma, Luke." Her voice was warm, but carefully neutral. "Your usual booth is free." Luke nodded stiffly, guiding Emma to their regular spot. He kept his responses short when Lily came to take their order, his posture rigid. He could feel her watching him, noting the new distance he was trying to maintain, but she didn't push or pry. Instead, she focused on Emma, asking about her week and complimenting the little girl's new hair clips. When she brought their food, she'd added a small flower made of whipped cream to Emma's pancakes, just like she always did. The familiar gesture made Luke's throat tight. As they ate, Luke found himself stealing glances at Lily while she worked. She moved between tables with easy grace, sharing gentle smiles and kind words with other customers. He'd forgotten how much he appreciated watching her work, how she seemed to know exactly what each person needed, whether it was a sympathetic ear or simple, comfortable silence. The distance he'd tried to put between them suddenly felt foolish, like building a wall to keep out the sunrise. He missed their conversations, the way she could make him smile without really trying, how she never pushed but always left the door open for him to talk, if he wanted to. Emma finished her pancakes and looked hopefully toward the counter where Lily was refilling sugar dispensers. "Can I go say hi to Miss Lily?" Luke hesitated, then nodded. "Just for a minute, okay?" As Emma skipped over to the counter, Luke watched Lily's face light up at his daughter's approach. She crouched down to Emma's level, listening intently to whatever story the little girl was sharing. The sight made something in Luke's chest loosen, a knot of tension he hadn't even realized he was carrying. When Lily brought their check, she placed it on the table with a gentle smile. "It's good to see you both," she said softly, and Luke could hear all the things she wasn't saying. "I understand. I'm here if you need me. Take your time." He managed a small nod, unable to meet her eyes but feeling the warmth of her presence. As she turned to leave, he found himself missing their easy conversations, the way she could make even the heaviest moments feel a little lighter. The wall he'd built between them suddenly felt like it was protecting nothing worth saving. Emma waved goodbye to Lily as they left, and Luke allowed himself one last glance over his shoulder. Lily was watching them go, that same patient understanding in her eyes. He realized that in trying to avoid her kindness, he'd only succeeded in making himself more aware of how much he'd come to rely on it. The morning sun was higher now as they walked home, Emma chattering about Lily's flower-decorated pancakes. Luke listened, feeling the weight of his self-imposed isolation, and wondering if perhaps there was more strength in accepting help than in refusing it. The evening sun cast long shadows through the diner's windows as Luke pushed open the glass door. The familiar bell chimed above his head, but tonight it felt different. Emma was at a sleepover with her best friend from kindergarten, and the emptiness beside him made his chest ache. The diner was quiet, with only a few regulars scattered at different tables. The smell of coffee and fresh pie filled the air, and the soft clink of silverware against plates created a gentle backdrop of sound. Luke slid into his usual booth, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. Lily noticed him immediately. She grabbed her notepad and made her way over, her steps measured and careful. "Hey, stranger," she said softly. "Know Emma tonight?" "Sleepover," Luke replied, managing a weak smile. "First one. House feels too quiet without her." Lily nodded, understanding in her eyes. "The usual?" she asked, though she was already writing it down. "Please." As she walked away, Luke watched her move between tables, checking on other customers. There was something about her that seemed different tonight, a subtle sadness in her movements that he hadn't noticed before. When she returned with his coffee, Luke could tell she wanted to say something. She hesitated, then slid into the seat across from him. The diner was slow enough that she could take a break, and something in her expression told Luke this wasn't just casual conversation. "You know," she began, her fingers tracing patterns on the worn tabletop. "I used to think I had to carry everything alone, too." She paused, taking a deep breath. "After David, my fiancé, died, I shut everyone out." Luke's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down carefully, watching her face. "It was a car accident," she continued, her voice steady but soft. 3 years ago, he was driving home from work, and a drunk driver." She shook her head, letting the sentence fade. "I thought if I just kept moving, kept working, kept pretending I was fine, eventually I would be." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Luke absorbed her words. His throat felt tight. "Did it work?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Lily's smile was sad, but genuine. "No, it just made everything harder. I was so determined to prove I could handle it all on my own that I didn't realize I was drowning." She looked up at him then, her eyes meeting his. "Sound familiar?" Luke felt exposed, like she could see right through him. His hands clenched around his coffee cup. "How?" He cleared his throat. "How did you get through it?" "I learned that healing isn't something you do alone," she said simply. "It happens in small moments, in conversations like this one, in letting people see your pain and help carry it." She reached across the table, her hand resting near his but not touching. "The hardest part was admitting I needed other people." Luke stared at her hand, so close to his. The walls he'd built around himself felt like they were cracking. "I don't know how," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Since coming back, since Sarah died, I don't know how to need people anymore." "I know," Lily said gently. "It's scary, terrifying actually. But look at you right now. You're already doing it." Luke looked up, surprised. Lily's eyes were warm, understanding. There was no judgment there, no pressure, just acceptance. "I'm afraid," he confessed, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. "If I start letting people in, if I admit how much this hurts." He trailed off, unable to finish. "You're afraid it'll break you?" Lily finished for him. When he nodded, she continued. "I felt the same way. But here's what I learned. We're already broken. Pretending we're not just keeps us from healing." The truth of her words hit him hard. Luke felt something inside him shift, like a door being opened after years of being locked. "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do you trust people again?" "One step at a time," Lily answered. "One conversation, one moment of honesty at a time, like right now." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the diner's ambient noise washing over them. Luke realized his coffee had gone cold, but he didn't care. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "at night, when Emma's asleep, I feel so alone it's like I can't breathe. The memories from my service, losing Sarah. It's too much." Lily nodded, understanding. "It is too much to carry alone. But you don't have to anymore. I'm supposed to be strong," Luke said, his voice rough. "For Emma. She needs me to be okay." "Being strong doesn't mean being alone," Lily replied. "Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is admit we need help." Luke felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. He blinked them back, but not before Lily noticed. She reached out and finally touched his hand, her fingers warm against his skin. "It's okay," she said softly. "It's okay to need people. It's okay to not be okay." Something inside Luke broke at her words, not violently, but gently, like ice melting in spring. He didn't pull his hand away. Instead, he turned it over, letting his palm meet hers. They talked for hours after that, long after the sun had set and the diner had emptied. Luke told her about his nightmares, about the guilt he carried from his time in service. He talked about Sarah, about how terrified he was of failing Emma. And Lily listened, really listened, sharing her own stories of grief and healing in return. For the first time in years, Luke felt the crushing weight of loneliness begin to lift. Here, in this quiet diner with its flickering neon signs and coffee-stained mugs, he found something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Hope that maybe he didn't have to carry this burden alone. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he could start to heal. The morning sunlight streamed through Luke's kitchen window as he watched Emma eat her cereal. His hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, and for once, the dark circles under his eyes weren't quite as prominent. He'd actually managed to sleep for a few hours last night. "Emma," he said softly, "would you like to hear about the time I helped build a school in Afghanistan?" Emma's eyes lit up. She nodded eagerly, milk dripping from her spoon. "Yes, Daddy. Was it like my school?" Luke smiled, remembering the small village and the children who had watched them work. "No, sweetheart. It was much smaller than your school. But the kids there were just as excited about learning as you are." He told her about mixing cement in the hot sun, about teaching the local children how to play soccer during breaks, and about the thank you cards they'd received when the project was finished. He kept the story simple and focused on the good parts, carefully avoiding any mention of the darker memories that usually haunted him. Emma listened intently, asking questions between bites of cereal. "Did they have a playground too?" "We built them some swings," Luke replied, his voice warm with the memory. "Nothing fancy, but those kids were so happy." Later that afternoon, Luke sat in a modest office, facing Dr. Matthews, the therapist Lily had recommended. The room was painted in calm blues and greens, with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. It felt less clinical than he'd expected. "What made you decide to come in today?" Dr. Matthews asked, his voice gentle but professional. Luke shifted in his chair, fighting the urge to leave. "My daughter and a friend. They helped me see that maybe I need this." The session was hard. Luke struggled to put words to feelings he'd buried for years, but Dr. Matthews was patient, helping him navigate through the mess of emotions without judgment. "It's okay to take small steps, Dr. Matthews assured him. "Healing isn't a race." Over the next few days, Luke found himself sharing more stories with Emma. During breakfast, he told her about the service dogs they worked with, how they helped soldiers feel better. At bedtime, he shared funny stories about the friends he'd made, carefully edited for her young ears. One evening, as they sat on their front porch swing, Emma curled against his side. "Daddy, you smile more now," she said simply. Luke's heart clenched. He pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "Do I?" "Uh-huh. And you don't look so tired anymore." He thought about that as he tucked her into bed that night. She was right. He did feel different. The weight was still there, but it felt more manageable somehow. Talking to Dr. Matthews, sharing stories with Emma, even the brief conversations with Lily at the diner, it all seemed to be helping. But thoughts of Lily brought a new kind of anxiety. She'd become important to both him and Emma, her presence a bright spot in their lives. Emma's face lit up whenever they visited the diner, and Luke found himself looking forward to their conversations, brief as they were. The next evening, after closing time at the diner, Luke waited outside. He'd asked Lily if they could talk, and his heart hammered in his chest as she approached, pulling her jacket around her against the cool evening air. "Everything okay?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Luke took a deep breath. "I wanted to thank you," he started, "for suggesting Dr. Matthews. For everything, really." Lily smiled warmly. "I'm glad you're getting help, Luke. Really glad." "There's something else," he continued, forcing himself to maintain eye contact. "I've been thinking a lot about Emma. About what's best for her while I work through all this." Lily waited patiently as he gathered his thoughts. "She loves you," Luke said finally, "and I trust you. I was wondering if you'd be willing to spend more time with her while I'm dealing with everything. I know it's a lot to ask." "Luke," Lily interrupted gently, "I'd love to spend more time with Emma. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore." Relief flooded through him. But anxiety quickly followed. "Are you sure? My issues. They're pretty heavy. I don't want to burden you with all this." "Hey," Lily said firmly, touching his arm. "I wouldn't offer if I wasn't sure. Emma is a wonderful little girl, and you're doing the right thing getting help. Let me be there for both of you." Luke nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When he finally found his voice, it was rough with emotion. "Thank you, Lily. I mean it." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the streetlights casting soft shadows around them. Luke felt both terrified and relieved. Terrified of letting someone else into their lives, but relieved that he wouldn't have to face everything alone anymore. "We'll figure it out," Lily assured him, her voice soft but confident. One day at a time. Luke sat in his usual spot at the diner counter, his coffee growing cold as he watched Emma color at their regular booth. Lily moved between tables, but every so often, she'd stop to peek at Emma's artwork, offering encouraging words that made his daughter beam with pride. It had been 3 weeks since he'd started therapy with Dr. Matthews. The sessions were difficult, often leaving him drained, but something was changing. The weight he'd carried for so long felt a little lighter each day. "More coffee?" Lily asked, appearing beside him with a fresh pot. "Please." He pushed his cup forward, noticing how her presence didn't make him tense anymore. "Emma's really taken to you." Lily's smile was warm as she filled his cup. "She's a special little girl. You're doing a great job with her, Luke." He watched her move away to help another customer, remembering their conversation from last night. They'd talked for hours after the diner closed, sharing stories about their lives. Lily had told him more about her fiancé, Mark, and the accident that took him away. Luke had shared memories of Sarah, Emma's mother, and his struggles with being a single parent. "Daddy," Emma called from the booth. "Come, look at my picture." Luke walked over, sliding into the seat across from her. Emma held up her drawing proudly. 3 stick figures holding hands. One was clearly him, tall with spiky brown hair. The smallest figure wore a pink dress that could only be Emma. The third figure had long yellow hair and a big smile. "Is that Lily?" he asked softly. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Can we give it to her? I think she'd like that very much." Later that week, Luke invited Lily over for dinner. It wasn't anything fancy, just spaghetti and meatballs, but Emma had insisted on helping set the table with their special plates, the ones with tiny blue flowers around the edges. "This is delicious," Lily said, twirling pasta around her fork. "I didn't know you could cook." Luke chuckled. "I had to learn. Can't raise a kid on takeout forever." "Daddy makes the best sketty," Emma declared, sauce smeared across her chin. After dinner, while Emma played with her dolls in the living room, Luke and Lily stood in the kitchen washing dishes. The domesticity of the moment struck him. How natural it felt to have her there, how much brighter the house seemed with her presence. "Dr. Matthews says, I'm making progress," Luke said quietly, passing her a plate to dry. "It's still hard, but having someone to talk to helps." Lily set down her dish towel and turned to face him. "I'm proud of you, Luke. I know how much courage it takes to face these things." Her words touched something deep inside him, a place that had been frozen for so long. Before he could respond, Emma came running into the kitchen, holding up one of her dolls. "Aunt Lily, will you play Tea Party with me?" The room went still. Luke's heart skipped a beat at Emma's words, "Aunt Lily." He watched Lily's expression soften, her eyes growing misty. "I'd love to have a tea party with you, sweetheart," Lily replied, her voice gentle, as Luke watched them settle onto the living room floor, arranging tiny plastic cups and saucers. Something warm bloomed in his chest. Emma hadn't called anyone aunt before, not even Sarah's sister who lived across the country. The trust in that simple word, the way his daughter had claimed Lily as family without hesitation, made his throat tight with emotion. He busied himself with finishing the dishes, stealing glances at them. Through the kitchen doorway, Emma was showing Lily how to hold her pinky up while drinking pretend tea, giggling as Lily made exaggerated posh expressions. The scene before him was everything he'd been afraid to want. His daughter happy and secure, someone who understood his struggles and stayed anyway, a home filled with laughter instead of silence. Standing there, in his kitchen, watching the 2 most important people in his life share a moment of pure joy, Luke felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. A smile tugged at his lips as Emma's delighted laughter filled the house. For the first time since returning from his deployment, the future didn't seem like something to dread. Instead, it felt like a promise, bright with possibility. The evening light filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow over the scene. Luke leaned against the kitchen counter, taking in every detail of this moment. The way Emma's face lit up when Lily pretended to sip from the tiny cup. How naturally Lily fit into their little world. The peace that settled over him like a comfortable blanket. Maybe Dr. Matthews was right. Maybe healing wasn't about forgetting the past or pushing through alone. Maybe it was about finding the courage to let others in, to accept help, to believe in second chances. "Daddy!" Emma called out. "Come have tea with us!" Luke dried his hands and walked into the living room, his heart full. As he sat down cross-legged on the floor, accepting a plastic teacup from his daughter, he caught Lily's eye. The understanding that passed between them needed no words. They both knew that something had shifted, that their little family of two had somehow grown to include her, and that none of them wanted it any other way. Luke stared at the letter, reading it for the third time. The Veterans Affairs logo seemed to mock him. Intensive PTSD recovery retreat jumped out, followed by breakthrough therapy and proven success rates. His hands trembled as he set the paper down. Through the window, Emma played in the backyard, her pink dress fluttering as she chased a butterfly. 3 weeks at a Colorado facility, with top therapists, but 21 days away from Emma, 21 mornings without making her breakfast. He called Dr. Matthews. "I got the letter about the retreat," Luke said, voice tight. "Excellent program, Luke. I've seen remarkable improvements." Luke watched Emma plop down in the grass. "It's 3 weeks. I know that seems long, but think about what it could mean for you and Emma." Luke ran a hand through his hair. "She's never been away from me for more than a day. Not since Sarah. Who would look after her?" "My sister Karen. Emma loves her aunt, but..." Luke sighed. "What if she needs me? What if something happens?" "Luke, Doctor," Matthew said gently, "you've been carrying this weight for a long time. The nightmares, anxiety, isolation, they affect Emma too. Sometimes being a good parent means taking care of yourself." The words stung. He thought about nights Emma heard him crying, times he'd withdrawn when he should have been present. Her innocent words at the diner, "Daddy cries at night," still hurt. Around dinner time, stirring Emma's favorite mac and cheese, Luke made his decision. He needed to tell her now. They sat at their kitchen table, Emma with her purple plastic cup of milk. "Emma, sweetie," he began softly, "Daddy needs to talk about something important." Emma looked up, her blue eyes, so much like her mother's, focused on him. "Is it about the crying?" Luke's heart clenched. "Sort of. You know how Daddy gets sad or scared at night?" Emma nodded. "Like when you have bad dreams?" "Exactly." Luke took her small hand. "There are doctors who help people like Daddy. They've invited me to stay with them so they can help me feel better." Emma's forehead wrinkled. "Like when I was sick?" "Similar. But I'd have to go away for a few weeks. You'd stay with Aunt Karen." Emma's eyes widened. "You're leaving?" The tremor in her voice nearly broke him. "Only for a little while, sweetheart. To help me get better. So I won't have bad dreams anymore, and I can be a better daddy." Emma pushed her macaroni around. "Will you call me?" "Every single day," Luke promised, voice thick. "And video calls so you can see me. And you'll come back?" "Of course." Luke knelt beside her chair. "I will always come back to you, Emma. You're my whole world." Emma threw her arms around his neck. "I want you to feel better, Daddy," she whispered. Luke held her tight, fighting tears. His daughter's simple understanding humbled him. She grasped what many adults struggled with, that sometimes love meant letting go. They stayed like that, dinner growing cold. Luke breathed in her strawberry shampoo, memorizing this moment. The decision still scared him, but he knew it was right. "How about ice cream for dessert?" he asked finally. Emma's eyes lit up. "With sprinkles?" "Extra sprinkles," Luke promised, managing a smile. As he got the ice cream, he glanced at the letter. Tomorrow, he'd accept his place. Tonight, he'd focus on making memories with his daughter. The morning sun cast long shadows across Luke's driveway as he loaded his duffel bag into the trunk of his car. The early autumn air felt crisp against his skin, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and morning dew. His hands moved mechanically through the motions of packing, but his mind was elsewhere, upstairs, where Emma still slept peacefully in her bed. He closed the trunk with a soft thud and walked back into the house, his footsteps heavy on the wooden porch steps. The kitchen clock read 6:15 a.m. He had planned everything carefully, leaving early to beat the traffic, making sure Emma's favorite breakfast was ready for when she woke up, arranging for his neighbor Mrs. Thompson to help watch her alongside Lily. Luke climbed the stairs quietly, each step feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He paused at Emma's doorway, watching her small form curled up under her pink princess blanket. Mr. Whiskers, her stuffed cat, was tucked securely under one arm. The sight made his throat tighten. "Emma, sweetheart," he called softly, sitting on the edge of her bed. "It's time to wake up." She stirred slowly, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy?" Her voice was thick with sleep. "Yeah, baby. Remember what we talked about? Today's the day I have to go away for a little while." Emma sat up, her blonde hair tousled from sleep. Her lower lip trembled slightly. "But you'll come back?" Luke gathered her into his arms, holding her close. "Of course I'll come back. I promise. And while I'm gone, you'll stay with Mrs. Thompson, and Lily will visit every day. Remember?" She nodded against his chest. "To help make you better?" "That's right." Luke swallowed hard. "To help make me better." The doorbell chimed downstairs. Luke knew it would be Lily. She had insisted on being there this morning, wanting to help make the transition easier for Emma. "Let's go see who that is," Luke said, lifting Emma into his arms. She wrapped her arms around his neck, still holding Mr. Whiskers. Lily stood on the porch, holding a small paper bag and what looked like a leather-bound notebook. Her eyes were warm but concerned as she took in Luke's tired face. "Good morning," she said softly, stepping inside. "I brought breakfast. Those chocolate chip muffins Emma loves." Emma's face brightened slightly at the mention of muffins, though she didn't loosen her grip on Luke's neck. They settled in the kitchen, the morning light growing stronger outside the windows. Emma picked at her muffin while Luke tried to drink his coffee, his stomach too knotted to manage more than a few sips. "I have something for you," Lily said, sliding the notebook across the table to Luke. "I know it might seem silly, but—" She trailed off, looking slightly embarrassed. Luke picked up the notebook. It was bound in soft brown leather, with a small compass etched into the cover. Opening it, he found the first page filled with Lily's neat handwriting. "Dear Luke, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we need help. Every page in this notebook contains a different quote or thought to help you through your journey. Read one each day. And remember, you're not alone in this." Luke had to close the notebook quickly, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "Thank you," he managed to say. The clock on the wall showed 7 a.m. It was time. "Emma, sweetie," Luke said, his voice rough. "I need to go now." Emma's lower lip trembled again, but she stood up bravely. Luke knelt down to her level, pulling her into a tight hug. "I love you so much," he whispered into her hair, "and I'm going to call you every single day. I promise." "I love you too, Daddy," Emma said, her small voice wavering. "Please get better." Luke held her tighter, fighting back tears. "I will, baby. I will." When he finally pulled back, Lily was there, her hand gentle on Emma's shoulder. She had tears in her eyes too, but she managed to smile. "We'll take good care of each other," she promised Luke. "Won't we, Emma?" Emma nodded, reaching up to hold Lily's hand. Luke stood up, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair. The notebook went into his pocket, its weight somehow reassuring against his chest. He picked up his keys, their familiar jingle suddenly seeming too loud in the quiet kitchen. At the door, he turned back one last time. Emma stood with Lily, both of them watching him. His daughter raised her small hand in a wave, and Luke had to force himself to turn away before they could see the tears in his eyes. The morning air felt colder now as he walked to his car. Each step away from the house felt wrong, like he was fighting against an invisible force trying to pull him back. He got into the driver's seat, his movements mechanical. The engine started with a quiet purr. Through the windshield, he could see Emma and Lily, standing in the doorway. Emma still held Mr. Whiskers, and Lily had her arm around the little girl's shoulders. As Luke pulled out of the driveway, his chest ached with a mixture of guilt and longing. The notebook in his pocket seemed to press against his heart, a reminder of why he was doing this. He had to get better, for Emma, for himself, and maybe even for the possibility of something more with Lily. But as his house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, all he could think about was his daughter's face and the promise he'd made to return better. The road ahead stretched out before him, leading away from everything he loved, even as it promised to lead him back to himself. The retreat center stood nestled among tall pine trees, its rustic wooden buildings a stark contrast to the busy life Luke had left behind. His room was simple, a single bed, a small desk, and a window that looked out over the mountains. Every morning, he'd wake up to birds chirping and the soft rustle of leaves, so different from the city sounds he was used to. The first few days were the hardest. Luke sat in group sessions, listening to other veterans share their stories, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Their words echoed his own experiences, the nightmares, the guilt, the constant feeling of being on edge. But something about hearing them speak made his own burden feel a little lighter. "We're going to do an exercise today, Doctor," Martinez, their therapist, announced during their morning session. "I want each of you to close your eyes and think about a moment that still haunts you." Luke's heart raced as he closed his eyes. The memory came rushing back, the explosion, the dust, the screams of his fellow soldiers. His hands started trembling. "Now, Doctor." Martinez's voice was gentle but firm. "I want you to acknowledge that moment. Don't push it away. Let yourself feel it." Sweat beaded on Luke's forehead as he forced himself to stay with the memory. His chest felt tight, like it might burst. "That's right, Doctor," Martinez encouraged. "Remember, you're safe here. The memory can't hurt you anymore." In the afternoon sessions, they worked on coping strategies. Luke learned breathing techniques and grounding exercises. At first, they seemed silly, counting objects in the room, focusing on the feeling of his feet on the floor. But gradually, he noticed they helped when the anxiety started creeping in. During individual therapy, Dr. Martinez helped Luke dig deeper into his past. They talked about his wife's death, how he'd never properly grieved because he was too busy being strong for Emma. "You've been carrying so much," she said one day, watching Luke struggle with his words. "It's okay to put some of that down." Luke wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I don't know how to be both strong and vulnerable. How do I do that for Emma?" "Being vulnerable isn't weakness, Luke. It's courage. It shows Emma that it's okay to feel, to hurt, to heal." The words hit him hard. He thought about all the times he'd hidden his tears from Emma, tried to shield her from his pain. Maybe he'd been teaching her the wrong lesson all along. In art therapy, they were asked to paint their feelings. Luke hadn't touched paint since grade school, but he found himself creating a dark landscape with a small light in the distance. When the therapist asked him about it, he surprised himself by talking about hope. Physical therapy was part of the program too. They did yoga and meditation, teaching their bodies to relax after years of being on high alert. Luke struggled with the stillness at first, his mind racing with thoughts of Emma, of Lily, of all he'd left behind. But slowly, he learned to be present in his body again. The breakthrough came during a session about forgiveness. They were discussing guilt, the weight of decisions made in impossible situations, the burden of survival when others didn't make it. "I should have done more," Luke said, his voice cracking. "I was their sergeant. They were my responsibility." "And what would you say to another sergeant in your position?" Dr. Martinez asked gently. Luke paused, considering. "I'd tell them they did their best. That war is chaos, and sometimes our best isn't enough. But that doesn't make it our fault. Can you offer yourself that same compassion? The question hung in the air. Luke felt tears rolling down his cheeks, but for once, he didn't try to hide them. That evening, sitting on his bed, Luke pulled out his phone. He'd been calling Emma every few days, but tonight felt different. His heart felt lighter, despite the emotional weight of the day. The phone rang twice before Emma's excited voice came through. "Daddy!" "Hey, princess." Luke smiled, picturing her bouncing on her toes like she always did during their calls. "How are you?" "Good. Aunt Lily took me to the park today, and I went all the way across the monkey bars by myself." Luke's smile widened. There was something different in Emma's voice, a confidence he hadn't heard before. "That's amazing, sweetheart. You must have been practicing hard." "Uh-huh. And guess what? I helped Mrs. Johnson next door water her flowers. She said I did a real good job." As Emma chatted about her day, Luke felt a warmth spread through his chest. She sounded so happy, so secure. He'd been worried about leaving her, afraid she'd feel abandoned. But here she was, thriving. "Daddy?" Emma's voice turned serious. "Are you feeling better?" Luke took a deep breath, considering his answer carefully. "I am, sweetheart. The doctors here are helping me a lot. I'm learning new things every day." "Good." Emma said simply, "I want you to be happy, Daddy." Luke felt tears prick at his eyes again, but this time they didn't hurt. "I'm getting there, princess. I really am." After they said goodbye, Luke sat for a long time, looking out his window at the mountains, silhouetted against the setting sun. He thought about Emma's voice, so full of life and joy. He thought about his own journey here, the walls he'd been breaking down, the healing he'd begun to embrace. For the first time in years, he felt something shift inside him. The pain wasn't gone, but it felt different now, less like a crushing weight and more like an old wound, finally beginning to heal. Emma was okay, and maybe, just maybe, he would be too. Luke sat in the quiet corner of his room at the retreat center, the morning sun streaming through the window. The small desk held his journal, now filled with 3 weeks of raw emotions, breakthrough moments, and painful memories he'd finally allowed himself to face. His therapist, Dr. Martinez, had encouraged him to write everything down, saying it would help him process his experiences. He picked up his pen, touching it to a fresh sheet of paper. This letter wasn't for his journal. It was for Lily. The words had been building in his heart for days. "Dear Lily," he began, his handwriting careful and measured. "I've learned something important here. Strength isn't about carrying burdens alone. It's about having the courage to let others help you carry them." He paused, remembering how she'd stood by him, even when he'd tried to push her away. "You saw through my walls before I was ready to admit they were there. Your kindness to Emma and me, it meant more than I could say." In his morning therapy session, Dr. Martinez had helped him understand how his isolation had become a shield, protecting him from potential hurt, but also keeping out the love and support he desperately needed. "We often confuse strength with solitude," she'd said, "but true strength lies in vulnerability." Luke continued writing, "The people here have taught me that PTSD isn't a sign of weakness. It's a normal response to abnormal circumstances. I'm learning tools to manage it, breathing exercises, grounding techniques, ways to stay present when the memories try to pull me back." He thought about Emma's video, calls, how her face lit up when she told him about her days with Aunt Lily. The guilt he'd once felt about leaving her had transformed into gratitude. His daughter was safe, loved, and happy. "Emma adores you," he wrote, "and watching you with her, seeing how naturally you stepped in to help us both, it's shown me what family really means. It's not just about blood, it's about who shows up, who stays, who helps carry the load." In group therapy, Luke had shared about Sarah's death, about the loneliness of raising Emma alone while battling his own demons. The other veterans had nodded, understanding the weight of trying to be both strong and broken at the same time. His pen moved steadily across the paper. "I'm learning to talk about Sarah now, to remember the good times without getting lost in the pain of losing her. The therapists here have helped me see that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means finding a way to carry those memories gently. Luke paused, taking a deep breath. The techniques they'd taught him had become second nature now. When anxiety crept in, he could ground himself in the present moment, feel the chair beneath him, notice the sunlight on his hands, hear the distant sound of birds outside his window. The nightmares are less frequent now, he wrote. I'm learning to recognize my triggers and handle them better. It's not perfect, the therapists say it never will be, but I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. I'm not afraid of myself anymore. He thought about their conversations at the diner, how Lily had shared her own loss, her own journey through grief. Her openness had been the first crack in his armor, showing him that vulnerability wasn't weakness. Thank you for sharing your story with me, he continued. When you told me about losing your fiancé, it helped me understand that pain doesn't have to be a wall between people. It can be a bridge, if we're brave enough to cross it. In his afternoon sessions, they'd worked on mindfulness and presence. Luke had learned to stay in the moment instead of getting lost in past traumas or future fears. He was learning to be there for Emma, really there. Not just physically present while his mind wandered through old battlefields. I'm becoming the father Emma deserves, he wrote. The therapists here have helped me understand that she doesn't need me to be perfect. She just needs me to be present, to listen, to try. You helped me see that too, in your own way. The sunlight shifted across his desk as he continued writing. When I get home, I want to do things differently. Not just for Emma, but for myself too. And maybe, if you're willing, you could be part of that new chapter. Not because I need saving, but because some people make life better just by being in it. Luke set down his pen, looking at the words he'd written. They felt honest, vulnerable, everything he'd been afraid to be before coming here. Doctor. Martinez had taught him that healing wasn't a destination but a journey, and he was finally ready to walk that path. In his final therapy session later that day, Dr. Martinez smiled as Luke shared his progress. You've done the hard work, she said. You've faced your past, acknowledged your pain, and learned new ways to cope. How do you feel about going home? Luke thought about Emma's smile, about Lily's quiet strength, about the life waiting for him back home. For the first time in years, he felt a deep sense of peace settling in his chest. I'm ready, he said. And he meant it. As he packed his bags that evening, Luke carefully folded the letter to Lily and placed it in his jacket pocket. The setting sun painted his room in warm colors, and he stood for a moment at the window, breathing in the quiet. The weight he'd carried for so long felt lighter now, manageable. He wasn't cured. PTSD didn't work that way, but he was stronger, more equipped to handle its challenges. He sat on his bed one last time, running his hands over the journal that had witnessed his transformation. The man who'd arrived here 3 weeks ago, broken and afraid, was not the same man preparing to leave. He felt steady, grounded, ready to face whatever came next. Not alone, never alone again, but with the strength that comes from knowing when to lean on others. The familiar bell above the diner's door chimed as Luke pushed it open, holding it for Emma, who bounced excitedly beside him. The morning sun filtered through the windows, casting warm patches of light across the checkered floor. The smell of coffee and fresh pancakes filled the air, bringing back memories of countless mornings spent here. Luke's heart beat a little faster as he scanned the diner. 3 weeks at the retreat had changed him in ways he was still discovering, but being back here made everything feel both familiar and new at the same time. Lily! Emma's delighted squeal pierced the calm morning atmosphere. She broke away from Luke's side, her small feet pattering across the floor as she ran toward the counter where Lily stood, coffee pot in hand. Lily's eyes widened in surprise, a bright smile spreading across her face as she quickly set down the coffee pot. She knelt just in time to catch Emma in her arms, wrapping the little girl in a tight hug. "Oh, sweetie, look at you." She pulled back to look at Emma's face, tucking a strand of hair behind the child's ear. "I missed you so much!" Luke watched the scene unfold, his throat tight with emotion. The sight of Emma's unbridled joy and Lily's genuine affection struck something deep within him. During his time away, He'd learned that healing wasn't just about facing his own demons. It was about allowing others to be part of his journey. "You got taller!" Lily exclaimed, standing up with Emma still clinging to her side. Her eyes met Luke's, and her smile softened. "Welcome back." Luke stepped forward, feeling steadier than he had in years. "It's good to be back," he said, meaning every word. The diner looked exactly the same. Same worn booths, same coffee-stained counter, same old jukebox in the corner, but he saw it all differently now. "Daddy got better," Emma announced proudly, beaming up at Lily. "He talks more now, and he doesn't cry as much at night." Luke felt his cheeks warm, but he didn't feel the shame that would have consumed him before. Instead, he found himself nodding. "She's right. The retreat, it helped more than I expected." Lily's eyes shimmered with understanding. "Your usual booth is free," she said, gesturing to their regular spot by the window. "Let me get you both settled." They followed her to the booth, Emma sliding in next to Luke instead of across from him like usual. Lily brought them menus they didn't need. They all knew their orders by heart. "Chocolate chip pancakes," Emma declared before Lily could even ask. "Some things never change." Lily laughed, jotting it down. She glanced at Luke. "Coffee, black, and the breakfast special?" He nodded, amazed at how she remembered. "You know us too well." "I'll be right back with your drinks," she said, but hesitated for a moment. "It's really good to see you both." As Lily walked away, Emma pulled out her coloring book and crayons, humming contentedly. Luke watched her, marveling at how resilient children could be. The therapists at the retreat had helped him understand that kids often reflected the emotional state of their parents. Seeing Emma so happy now, he realized just how much his own healing was already affecting her. When Lily returned with their drinks, she lingered at the table. "It's a slow morning," she said, glancing around the nearly empty diner. "Mind if I join you for a minute?" Luke gestured to the empty seat across from them. "Please do." Lily slid into the booth, her hands wrapped around her own cup of coffee. "So," she said softly, "how was it?" Luke took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. He'd practiced being more open during therapy, but it still took conscious effort. "It was intense," he began, "but good. Really good." He watched Emma coloring, completely absorbed in her task. "They helped me understand things I've been carrying around for years, taught me ways to handle the nightmares, the anxiety." Lily listened intently, her presence as comforting as ever. "That's wonderful, Luke. I learned that it's okay to need help," he continued, meeting her eyes. "That being strong doesn't mean doing everything alone." He paused, gathering courage. "I want to thank you, Lily, for everything you've done for us." She shook her head slightly. "I didn't do anything special." "You did," Luke insisted. "When everyone else saw a broken veteran who couldn't handle being a father, you saw someone worth helping. You didn't try to fix me or tell me what to do. You just stayed, even when I pushed you away." Emma looked up from her coloring book. "Lily makes everything better," she declared with the simple wisdom of a child. "Just like my daddy does now." Lily's eyes glistened with tears, but her smile remained steady. "Oh, sweetie," she said, reaching across to squeeze Emma's hand. Then she looked at Luke again. "You know, it was never about fixing you. Some things don't need fixing, they just need someone to walk beside you while you figure them out yourself." Luke felt the truth of her words settle in his chest. The therapist had said similar things, but hearing it from Lily made it real in a different way. She had been there from the beginning, watching his struggle, offering silent support, and never demanding more than he could give. The morning light caught in Lily's hair as she leaned forward to show Emma how to color inside the lines. Luke watched them together, feeling a profound sense of peace. He still had work to do. Healing wasn't a destination, but a journey. But for the first time in years, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Emma's giggles filled the air as Lily made a silly face at her drawing. The sound reminded Luke of wind chimes in a gentle breeze, light, clear, and full of joy. He sipped his coffee, letting the familiar bitter taste ground him in the moment. "Your breakfast will be ready soon," Lily said, starting to slide out of the booth. I should check on it. Luke nodded, understanding the practical needs of her job. But before she could leave, he spoke again. Thank you, Lily, for walking beside us. Her smile was warm and genuine. Always, she said simply, and in that word, Luke heard all the promise of tomorrow. Emma skipped ahead, her pink backpack bouncing with each step, while Luke and Lily strolled behind her, their shoulders occasionally brushing. Watch where you're going, sweetheart, Luke called out as Emma nearly collided with a jogger. She giggled and waved back at them. She has so much energy, Lily said, smiling. It's wonderful to see her so happy. Luke nodded, his eyes softening as he watched his daughter. She's different now. More free, I guess. The therapy helped me understand how my struggles were affecting her. You're different too, Lily observed quietly. There's a lightness about you that wasn't there before. They reached the playground, and Emma made a beeline for the swings. Push me, Aunt Lily, she called out excitedly. Lily glanced at Luke, who nodded with a warm smile. She jogged over to Emma, helping her onto the swing, while Luke settled onto a nearby bench. He watched them together. Lily's gentle pushes, Emma's delighted squeals, their shared laughter floating across the playground. The next weekend, they decided to have a picnic in Luke's backyard. Lily brought her famous chocolate chip cookies, which Emma had declared were the best in the whole wide world. They spread out a checkered blanket on the grass, and Emma insisted on helping to arrange everything just perfect. The sandwiches go here, she announced, placing them carefully in the center. And the cookies have to be special, so they go right here. She patted a spot near the edge of the blanket. Luke watched his daughter direct their little picnic setup, amazed at how naturally she had taken to Lily's presence in their lives. The three of them sat together, sharing stories and laughing at Emma's animated descriptions of her kindergarten adventures. And then Tommy put the crayon in his nose, Emma explained, giggling uncontrollably. He didn't! Lily gasped in mock horror, making Emma laugh even harder. Luke felt something warm spread through his chest as he watched them interact. It was different from the crushing weight he'd carried for so long. This feeling was light, peaceful. Their time together began to fall into comfortable routines. Sunday mornings became pancake breakfast at Luke's house, with Emma helping Lily mix the batter while Luke prepared the coffee. Sometimes they'd get more flour on themselves than in the bowl, but nobody seemed to mind. One Wednesday evening, after picking Emma up from school, they stopped by the diner during Lily's shift. Emma proudly showed Lily her latest art project, a family drawing featuring 3 stick figures holding hands. That's Daddy. She pointed to the tallest figure. And that's you, and that's me in the middle. Lily's eyes glistened as she looked at the drawing, then at Luke. He felt his throat tighten with emotion, understanding the significance of Emma's simple illustration. They started having movie nights every Friday, all 3 of them squeezing onto Luke's worn couch. Emma would usually fall asleep halfway through, her head resting on Lily's lap while Lily absently stroked her hair. These quiet moments became precious to Luke, filling his home with a warmth he'd thought he'd never feel again. During one such evening, as they watched Emma playing with her toys in the living room, Lily turned to Luke. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what? For letting me be part of this. For trusting me with your story. With Emma." Luke reached over and squeezed her hand. "Thank you for not giving up on us when I tried to push you away." Their days began to blend together in the best possible way. Whether they were helping Emma with her homework, going for ice cream walks, or simply sharing quiet moments in the garden, there was a sense of rightness to it all. One evening, about a month after Luke's return from the retreat, they decided to have dinner at his house. The kitchen filled with the aroma of Lily's lasagna while Emma set the table, insisting on using the fancy plates they usually saved for special occasions. "But it's not a holiday," Luke pointed out, amused. "Every dinner with Aunt Lily is special." Emma declared with the certainty only a 5-year-old could muster. They gathered around the table, passing dishes and sharing stories about their day. Emma chatted enthusiastically about the class pet hamster, while Lily talked about a funny incident at the diner. Luke mostly listened, taking in the scene before him. The soft glow of the dining room light illuminated their faces. Emma's eyes sparkled as she gestured animatedly, telling her stories. Lily's gentle laugh filled the room, her presence fitting so naturally into their home, their lives. The walls that had once felt like they were closing in on Luke now seemed to embrace them all, creating a space where healing and happiness could coexist. As he watched Emma lean over to whisper something in Lily's ear, both of them dissolving into giggles, Luke felt something shift inside him. The revelation wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was more like the final piece of a puzzle sliding into place. Here, in this moment, with these two people, he was no longer the broken soldier trying to hold himself together. He was no longer alone. Looking at both Emma and Lily, seeing the joy and love that radiated between them, Luke realized they had become something more than just 3 separate people who spent time together. They had become a family, not in the traditional sense perhaps, but in all the ways that truly mattered. For the first time in years, Luke felt like he belonged, like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Emma's voice broke through his thoughts. "Daddy, you're smiling really big." "I am?" Luke touched his face, surprised to find that he was indeed smiling. "I guess I am." "It's because you're happy," Emma stated matter-of-factly, reaching for another piece of garlic bread. "Like me and Aunt Lily." Lily caught his eye across the table, her own smile reflecting understanding and something deeper. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of their laughter and the simple joy of sharing a meal together, Luke knew with absolute certainty that he had found his way home. The evening sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink as Luke and Lily sat on the front porch of his house. The wooden swing creaked gently beneath them as they watched Emma playing with her dolls on the lawn. The air was warm and sweet, with the scent of blooming flowers from the garden they'd planted together last weekend. Luke's hands rested comfortably on his knees, more relaxed than they'd been in years. The tension that used to live in his shoulders had eased, replaced by a calm he'd never thought possible. He glanced at Lily, taking in her peaceful expression as she watched Emma. "You know," he said softly, breaking the comfortable silence between them, "I never thought I'd be here. Like this, I mean." Lily turned to him, her eyes warm with understanding. "Here on this porch or here in this moment?" "Both, I guess," Luke chuckled, running a hand through his graying hair. "A few months ago, I couldn't imagine sitting still long enough to watch a sunset. My mind was always racing, always." He trailed off, searching for the right words. "Always on guard?" Lily offered gently. "Yeah," he nodded, watching Emma arrange her dolls in a circle for what appeared to be a very important tea party. "But now, everything feels different." "Better." Lily smiled, her hand finding his on the swing between them. "You did the work, Luke. You faced everything head-on at that retreat. That takes real courage. I couldn't have done it without you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You and Emma. You gave me something to come back to, something to fight for." Emma looked up from her dolls and waved enthusiastically at them. They waved back, sharing a laugh as she returned to her elaborate game with renewed enthusiasm. "What do you think about the future?" Lily asked, her voice thoughtful. "Does it still feel scary?" Luke considered this for a moment, watching the sun sink lower on the horizon. "Not scary exactly. Different, maybe. But in a good way." He turned to face her more fully. "For the first time, I'm actually looking forward to what comes next. Emma's starting school soon, and I'm thinking about maybe volunteering at the Veterans Center." "Really?" Lily's face lit up. "Luke, that's wonderful." "You'd be amazing at that." "Well, I figure if I can help even one person feel less alone than I did." He shrugged, but his eyes were bright with purpose. "And what about you? Any big plans?" Lily leaned back in the swing, her shoulder touching his. "I've been thinking about going back to school, actually. Maybe study counseling. The diner's been good to me, but you want more?" Luke finished, squeezing her hand. "You should do it. You're already so good at helping people." "You think so?" She looked uncertain for a moment. I know so. Look what you did for me and Emma. They fell into a comfortable silence, watching as the neighbor's kids joined Emma in her game. The sounds of children's laughter filled the early evening air, mixing with the chirping of birds and the distant hum of lawnmowers. Speaking of Emma, Lily said, she asked me something interesting yesterday. Oh? Luke raised an eyebrow. She wanted to know if I was going to be around for her birthday next month. Lily's voice was careful, measured. She said she wants to make sure I'm there to help blow out the candles. Luke felt warmth spread through his chest. And what did you tell her? I told her I wouldn't miss it for the world. Lily paused, then added softly, if that's okay with you. Luke turned to look at her. Really look at her. The setting sun caught the auburn highlights in her hair, and her eyes held the same kindness that had first drawn him to her. Lily, I hope you'll be around for all her birthdays. And mine too, for that matter. She smiled, squeezing his hand. I'd like that. Very much. Emma's delighted squeal drew their attention back to the yard, where she was now organizing what appeared to be a complex game of tag with the neighbor kids. Her face was flushed with joy, her pigtails bouncing as she ran. She's so different now, Lily observed. More confident, happier. He watched his daughter play, marveling at how far they'd come. The night terrors that used to plague him had become less frequent, and when they did come, he had tools to handle them now. More importantly, he had people to lean on. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn. More neighborhood kids had joined Emma's game, their laughter echoing through the quiet street. Luke felt a deep sense of contentment settle over him as he watched them play. This was what healing looked like, not the absence of pain, but the presence of joy alongside it. Emma caught his eye and waved again, her smile bright enough to rival the setting sun. Luke waved back, then turned to Lily, taking her hand properly in his. Together, they watched the children play, their joined hands resting comfortably between them on the swing. The future stretched out before them, not as a source of anxiety anymore, but as a path filled with possibility. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, him, Emma, and Lily, their little family, unexpected but perfectly right. As the day's light faded into dusk, the yard came alive with fireflies, drawing gasps of wonder from the children. Emma chased them with her new friends, her laughter ringing clear and true in the evening air. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Luke Harris, I hand-picked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.